also need to understand that campaigns are not launched any longer. They're lived. What that means is that you cannot strategize, do your creative, launch it, wait for the results. These campaigns are happening consistently. They do not end. You can't turn your back on them. You need to keep your eye on them and see when they're starting to gain momentum in a positive way and also sometimes in a negative way. So you need to continue to monitor that. And they need to be tested, optimized, retested, and really measured to make sure that they're achieving your goals. So I want to cover a three-pronged approach. Customer care we've been talking a little bit about, and I want to touch on the marketing and PR side as well. So with social media, marketing is using it for branding, direct response. Surveys and focus groups are great uses of social media from a marketing perspective, and also viral marketing. On the PR side, product launches, gaining media interest, public service announcements, and then crisis communications, which we've all heard a lot about as well. And then finally, from Frank and Kim, peer support through online forums, customer service. What's interesting is high-touch personalized communications. We're dealing with technology, we're dealing with the computer screen, but this really is a very personal medium. So it's a great opportunity within that, and then also to minimize outbreaks when that happens. Entering the conversation. The first thing that you need to do is determine your business objectives. Why are you getting into social media? Are you doing it because everybody's doing it? Are you doing it because you're looking to generate new opportunities or create customer retention? Or is it to really learn how people are interacting with your brand? Those need to be determined up front. And then a second element to that is how are you going to track it? There are elements of social media that are a little bit more difficult to track, but there are a lot of sides to it as well that can be tracked. Unique URLs, unique telephone numbers as you are engaging in social media. If you are having more of a marketing or a public relations conversation, there are things that you can do to actually measure that. And as much as there are elements that maybe cannot or will not be measured, there are a lot of things that you can do that are actually trackable. And it is important to understand that so you can report back to management on it. But even more importantly, you can optimize your campaigns and your approach. So a couple metrics that you want to think about is your social position in the landscape. Number of competitive company mentions, and are they positive, negative, indifferent? Is your competition engaging in social media? Are they not? And then for yourself, how are you showing up in social media as a brand, your employees, and so on? You want to research the social media landscape, so you want to take a look at your share of voice there. You want to identify those niche sites that I mentioned as well and really find out where your audience resides. You want to identify those key influencers, key bloggers, people who have a strong effect in the social media community so that you can build relationships. And then also prepare for the worst but expect the best. The upside of social media far outweighs the downside. But if there is one thing you can prepare for is the negative side. Not that you're going to be prepared for everything that's going to pop up, but you need to recognize the fact that there's a very good chance that those types of posts will happen, and if you can at least have some of a strategy going into it, you'll be prepared at least to start reacting. And trust is paramount. So when you go to enter a conversation, ask permission. Identify yourself as a brand right off the bat. Have a conversation. So it's as much as I'm talking about marketing, it's not about getting in there and giving them an ad or a presentation. It's having a conversation. Think of it as a conversation you would have with anybody else. You wouldn't sit there and promote yourself the entire time. So it's the same thing. It's really opening up a dialogue. It's seeing where you can help, where you can add value, and when the appropriate time comes, if you're asked, that's when you provide that other type of information. So you want to be engaging. You want to commit to the medium. So to interact with a particular social website, a blog, and do it once and not come back for quite some time, people notice that. And people could be talking about that while you're not there. So it's important that you really commit and that you use the right tools to monitor all of these different outlets. And finally, you need to be willing to adapt. This is something that literally changes every minute. As I was walking out the door coming here, people on our staff were handing me things that are just happening with Facebook piece and some of the other it is constantly moving. It's moving fast and does not stop. So, best practices, some industry guidelines. Focus on building relationships, not on direct promotion, as I said earlier. Engage when the topic is relevant and the information you have may be useful to another user of that service. Make sure you're aware of all the terms and conditions on the websites that you're involved with to make sure that you're complying. And remember that your personal communications reflect on your brand as a whole. This is a new area as well. When it comes to your employees, to your marketing teams, to your public relations teams, all of these individuals are putting your brand out there. And so, for the most part, there needs to be somewhat of a strategy to help understand how these groups or these individuals are working together for the common good of the organization. So let's talk about your investment now in social media. As I mentioned earlier, it is a low-cost or a no-cost medium or channel to enter into. However, it does take a lot of time. So with that, there's the research time, there's the interaction time, and although the staff working in social media doesn't necessarily have to be technical, it does help to have technologically savvy individuals in order to really capitalize on the opportunities that will present themselves and the ability to leverage technology to find these new outlets and to engage in these new outlets. The organization has to commit itself to a more flexible structure. Again, you can't have everything approved. You have to have trusted individuals running these conversations for you. And the traditional way of scripting, editing, approvals, routing things around, it's just not going to work in the social media space. Although you can and should have a strategy up front, which are guidelines. It's also a more informal communication style. And then finally, understanding that social media can absolutely be a lead generation and a client retention tool. And it's something, again, when it comes to that strategy, you figure out how are we going to use social media for marketing, how are we going to use it for public relations, and then how are we going to use it for customer support. And as Frank said earlier, there is a flattening between those three sides to a business, and it's important that each knows what the other is doing, because at the end of the day, if you're using social media to support your clients, it is public relations as well, and it's probably marketing. When you're talking to that one individual and you're solving their problem, it's customer support, but everyone else who's watching is looking at it potentially from a different perspective, so that always has to be kept in mind. First steps. Before you're entering into social media, the most important thing is to listen to the conversations that are happening around you. So there are tons and tons of tools. There are free tools. There are very expensive tools. I just wanted to share a few up here for those of you who might be embarking on this for the first time, just to start to get a feel for what's out there. So Google Alerts is a great service. It's an email service that can alert you to postings that have to do with particular topics through blogs, through the news. Tracker helps you monitor things like your employees, CEO's name, clients' names, really to look at things at a more specific level. And I'll make this available for you guys afterwards as well, if you don't have paper and pen with you. Blog Pulse, online system that reveals whether specific keywords and phrases are gaining attention. So if you are looking for momentum under a particular topic, this is a great tool to monitor that. So when the iPhone was first released, this tool was one of those that would show you the penetration of media that was talking about the iPhone at the time. It was pretty amazing, because I think it was actually about 100%. And finally, Geotag, which is a monitoring system that tracks search engines' news feeds for tags. So it's almost a search engine of search engines, where you can put these keyword phrases in there, niche communities that you're looking for, and it has a tool that literally lets you thumb through just about every engine you can imagine and see what's coming up in those rankings. So what does the future hold? The channel of social media is really a new way of doing business in an increasingly digital life. So it's absolutely gaining momentum, and it's going to continue. People aren't just listening, they're engaging. And the current economic conditions are really obviously driving marketers to do more with less, so there's a heightened interest in social media. As I mentioned earlier, too, this is social media kind of wraps around everything. If we look at the most effective channels right now in marketing and in online marketing, on the lead generation side, search engine marketing is one of the strongest. client support, client retention, client growth, email marketing has made a very big comeback, and it's rock solid for those types of communications. Social media layers on top of all of that because it can help you with your PR, your marketing, and your customer support. So it's an integral channel that you don't necessarily just parse it off and say, okay, we're going to do this, and social media. Social media really kind of interweaves itself between everything.